ha mai sentito parlare nell'ambiente che ha frequentato di Cosa Nostra, associazione criminale Cosa Nostra?
Guardarsi che io sono avvocato, non ho frequentato nessuna criminale Cosa Nostra e quindi non conosco.
La domanda è se ne conosce l'esistenza.
Se ne ha sentito parlare.
No, non ho sentito parlare.
Non ha mai sentito parlare di Cosa Nostra?
No.
Non conosce questa organizzazione?
No.
Non sa nulla di questo?
No, avvocato.
Quindi l'ha letta soltanto sui giornali?
Ma su delle televisioni, giornali, sì.
Sicily, a place where beauty and violence have shared the same address for centuries. Where the sea sparkles, the food hums with life, and history, the kind written in blood, still lingers in the air. Here there's a phrase everyone knows. Cosa Nostra. Our thing. Not a restaurant, not a club. A way of life. Born from poverty, silence, and distrust. A shadow government that ruled not from palaces, but from back rooms and funeral parlors. In the 1800s, Sicily was the forgotten child of Italy. Poor, lawless, and angry. The government in Rome was far away. Justice was a joke, so people turned to men who could get things done. Protection, favors, vengeance, all handled quietly and efficiently. They called them men of honor. They wore suits instead of uniforms, offered respect instead of laws, and out of that grew the mafia, not as a gang, but as an institution, part of the landscape, as Sicilian as olive oil and vendettas. Cosa Nostra wasn't chaos, it was order, their version of it. Families, territories, rules, a boss, an underboss, a consigliere. You didn't just join, you were made, baptized in fire and blood, a saint's image burned in your hand while you swore eternal silence. And silence, omerta, was everything. You didn't talk to cops. You didn't talk about cops. You didn't talk, period. If you broke that rule, they didn't argue with you. They erased you. After World War II, Sicily was chaos again. Bombed cities, black markets, desperation. Cosa Nostra slipped in like a shadow, rebuilding, lending money, controlling land. By the 1960s, they owned half of Palermo's construction industry. They got their hands into politics, police, business, everything. Then came the Corleonesi, hard men from the countryside, Salvatore Totò Riina, Bernardo Provenzano, names whispered with fear. They didn't negotiate. They butchered their way to the top. Even other mafia bosses weren't safe. It was a civil war in suits and shotguns. By the 1980s, Sicily was bleeding. Car bombs, assassinations. Judges, generals, journalists, anyone who stood in their way. But two men refused to bow. Giovanni Falcone and Paolo Borsellino. They built cases, gathered evidence, and launched the Maxi trial. 475 mafiosi on the stand. It was the first time the state really looked the mafia in the eye. At the center of this violent mess was a man named Toto Riina, the kind of guy who didn't just break the law, he redefined it. His rise to power wasn't just through money, but through sheer, terrifying brutality. His war wasn't just about killing rivals. It was about sending a message, and he did. He took down judges, politicians, anyone who dared challenge him. Even Giovanni Falcone and Paolo Borsellino, two fearless magistrates who were publicly waging their own battle against the mafia, ended up dead in the street. A car bomb for lunch? In Sicily, it was the grim reality. And the mafia blinked back with dynamite. Falcone and Borsellino were murdered months apart in 1992. Sicily wept, but something broke that day. Not in fear, but in silence. People finally began to speak. The arrests came one after another. Riina in 1993, Provenzano in 2006, and then after 30 years underground, Matteo Messina Denaro, the last old school boss, captured in 2023, hiding in plain sight. Cosa Nostra isn't gone, but it's not what it was. Today, they launder money, manipulate business contracts, and smile for the cameras. No more Tommy guns in the street, just suits, spreadsheets, and offshore accounts. Power never disappears. It just learns how to use a smartphone. Of course, Hollywood got to it. The Godfather, Goodfellas. Romanticized versions of real men who killed real people. Ask a Sicilian about it and you'll get a sigh, maybe a bitter smile. Because for them, the mafia isn't an aesthetic, it's trauma. But out of that trauma came resistance. Vineyards, co-ops, and restaurants now sit on land seized from mafia bosses, run by young Sicilians who believe in a different kind of our thing. They're rewriting the story, one bottle of wine, one loaf of bread at a time. Sicily doesn't forget. You can feel its history in the stones, in the food, in the way people look at each other. Cosa Nostra was born here, lived here, and maybe will die here. But like everything in Sicily, it's complicated. This island has always belonged to those who survive, and survival here has never been clean. Sicily was a war zone, but not the kind you'd find in a history book. This wasn't about countries fighting for borders. It was about blood, power, and control. Under the thumb of the mafia, the streets of Palermo were like a battleground where the Cosa Nostra wasn't just an organized crime group, it was the government. For years, Sicily was the Wild West of Italy, with families like the Corleonesi and the old-school Palermo clans carving up the island like a butcher with a cleaver. For generations, Sicily was the island that fed the imagination and the fear of the world. The mafia wasn't just a criminal organization here. It was part of the landscape, the air, the politics, the blood. It ruled neighborhoods, dictated who got work, who stayed silent, and who disappeared. But here's the thing, amid all the violence, amid the bloodshed, you still find a strange beauty. It's in the crumbling streets of Palermo, the resilient spirit of the people who've survived decades of war, who still drink espresso in the morning and sing their hearts out in the evening. Sicily is a place where the past never truly lets go, but it's also a place where people push through, rebuild and create something new, sometimes despite themselves. Palermo today hums with a strange kind of defiance. It's loud, chaotic, unfiltered, like the sea after a storm. Every market stall, every old man yelling prices for swordfish or sardines, every hand that gestures too much. It's a reminder that Sicily doesn't die, it transforms. After the mafia wars, the bloodshed of the 80s and 90s, when brave judges like Falcone and Borsellino were blown apart for daring to fight, something broke open here. People had seen enough. The silence cracked. Now those faces are everywhere, not as ghosts, but as guardians. Kids learn their names in school. There are anti-mafia cooperatives growing wine and olive oil on land, once owned by mob bosses. Places once soaked in fear now produce Nero d'Avola and pistachios for tourists from Berlin and Boston. You can taste the irony and the triumph in every bite. In Corleone, yes, that Corleone, young people are coming back, not for crime, but for community. They're rebuilding, replanting. They talk about dignity, about reclaiming the word Sicilian. It's no longer a synonym for Cosa Nostra. It's sunburnt hands, salted skin, laughter that echoes down cobbled alleys. But it's not simple. It never is. The mafia didn't just vanish. It adapted. Like the island itself, it learned to survive. Quieter, smarter, less cinematic than the movies. You won't see shootouts in the streets anymore, but you might still feel the old networks in business deals, in whispers, in who gets what contract. Progress here isn't a straight line. It's more like a coastline, beautiful, irregular, and full of hidden coves. Ask anyone old enough to remember, and they'll tell you, the mafia wasn't just men with guns. It was poverty. It was powerlessness. It was the price of survival when the state looked the other way. Now the new generation doesn't want to live in fear, but they're still living with the past. In Palermo's Ballarò market, you can see it in the food. Caponata, arancine, panelle. Dishes born from scarcity, turned into celebration. The poor made miracles out of chickpeas and eggplant, and in doing so wrote their own kind of resistance. That's Sicily for you. Every tragedy becomes a recipe. Outside the cities in the hills above Agrigento or the dusty roads near Caltanissetta, time feels elastic. The same grandmothers who hid their sons from violence now teach their granddaughters how to make pasta by hand. The same olive groves where men once met in secret now host weddings and music festivals. The ghosts are still here, sure, but they're learning to share the table. This is the Sicily I love, not the postcard, not the movie set. The real one, raw, contradictory, endlessly forgiving. An island that's been conquered by Greeks, Romans, Arabs, Normans, and Americans, and yet remains defiantly itself. There's a saying here, Sicilia è una donna. Sicily is a woman. Beautiful, unpredictable, wounded, proud. She's been betrayed more times than she can count. And yet she still opens her doors, pours you a glass of wine, and feeds you like family. If you come here looking for the mafia, you'll find something else instead. Resilience. A quiet revolution, an island learning to live without fear. One meal, one vineyard, one conversation at a time. Sicily after the Mafia Wars isn't a story of heroes and villains. It's a story of endurance, of people choosing to stay, to rebuild, to remember, of beauty that refuses to die even when the world thinks it should. Because that's the thing about Sicily. You can scar her, you can burn her, you can break her heart 100 times, and she'll still wake up the next morning, put on her sunglasses, and make you the best damn pasta alla norma you've ever had. This isn't the Sicily of fear anymore. It's the Sicily of life. Loud, messy, proud, and absolutely unafraid to be itself. And maybe, just maybe, that's the real revenge.